Wolfman is the latest Blumhouse feature to offer some frights, but is it worth your time? Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you seen Wolfman? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Or is it somewhere right in the middle? Let me know all your thoughts. Make sure to like your video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. And getting right into the synopsis. When Blake and his family takes a break from the city in order to visit his remote childhood home, that all goes about with events that an unseen animal traps them in their house. But there's strange events going about as Blake begins to act stranger as he transforms into something else. Getting right into positive, Wolfman is directed by Leigh Whannell, who has done Upgrade and Invisible Man in the past, and I feel he has done a great handle for what he's doing with these Universal classic monsters things, what he's bringing and reinventing the wheel in one sense, the way he's taking all these things and creating something that is different than the story. I did get to watch the original Wolfman 1941 film before watching this, and so there are different things, and it's about 40 minutes longer than that original, so it certainly beefs up the story with other elements, things that change up the pacing, what's all going about, and doesn't necessarily feel like it's a copy and paste version, so it already has an advantage of doing something unique and manages to take you into this quest that is all experiencing this element and theme of parenthood, which was a surprising thing to integrate within this, but is well handled, and I understand exactly what they're trying to do, especially with the fatherhood and then the mother just as well more toward the end, how that all integrates within the story, the protection and fear within the family, how things build up the tension, lead on to the second half that really builds upon the energy here and there, just builds up something that is worthwhile in some sense for what they're doing with some of the scenes. It feels well directed, and Leigh Whannell brings up some unique taste in what they're doing with these Wolfman films for doing an approach for utilizing some computer technology or other things in order to create a different environment, different techniques to show the Wolfman senses itself and the look of everything that's going about, showing the night vision or showing that he's hearing sounds louder than they are in real life by hearing a spider that's way up and upstairs. So there's different techniques that shows that it's well balanced within. It's something that will be more appreciated by those that like different styles, things they're wanting to experiment with the film. And so it almost has a down-to-earth setting to some retrospect for what it's tackling, how it's portraying someone that just is starting to experience all the symptoms of becoming a Wolfman. How the Wolfman looks isn't necessarily your greatest, but there's some things about the transformation that looks really great. The practical or animation, however they really pull that off, the deforming of bones or other things, the teeth falling out, other things that come about along the way in order to grow the hair, other things, the transformation does look great. So there's things in technology that is utilized in its fullest extent that does bring about a few scares along the way, creating some interesting dialogue and things that ultimately can work from time to time. Which takes me into the mix elements, to which there is some characters here and there that don't necessarily offer a whole lot. It's more in a remote environment. The character cast isn't big, but there's also things where they reference things based on a prologue. The prologue doesn't do a whole lot for the story outside of what's essential for a twist that comes later on, to which the twist can be predictable or not. I kind of saw it coming in one sense, but it wasn't necessarily anything that was heavily implied. Feels like it was totally referenced as a strong trope that you could predict from a mile away, but it could throw some people off depending on how much you catch on to it and if it ruins your experiment. And of course, like I mentioned, there is some technology usage, what they utilize with the Wolfman senses, that isn't going to be for everyone. It doesn't look bad per se. It has great camera movements in order to show the transition that you're able to catch on once it does it one or two times, but the way it pulls it off can be something that's not necessarily for everyone. People may be wanting the action, some other types of the story that could utilize the story more usefully and more energetically, but it is something that could work for some people more than others. And of course, there's also things here and there that within the beginning of the story, it can take a little bit of a while. Like I mentioned, this is based on a film that was 1 hour and 7 minutes, and while we're not necessarily expecting it to be that short for films nowadays, that still can be a generous offering they could have done, or cut down the story a little bit, because some of the parts at the beginning, whether in the prologue or as they're starting the story, really gets you into the parenthood theme that has to be implied more at the beginning in order to understand more details later on. But unfortunately, it can slow down the pace of what all is going on throughout, the things that actually get them taken back out into the woods, rather than what we start off with, how the prologue ends, feeling like it was going to go straight forward, but taking it 30 years later can throw some of the things off a little bit, having to catch you up with the characters now that they're 30 years later, and things that don't necessarily reference back to something that's close by, or something that goes with a through point, taking certain things, and there's certain jobs with the main characters that don't have a lot of implication to what this story is all offering. So unfortunately, there's some things that just really take the film back a little bit. It's not necessarily a make or break for the film, which is why I sort of am mixed on it and feel some people may love it or dislike it more than others. So that's just ultimately what's all going on with that. But that goes into the negatives, to which I feel this film is compacted and filled up to the brim with too much ideas, too much things that's going on. It's taking things where the Wolfman doesn't ultimately look great. There's some concept art that was revealed later on just recently that looks better for the Wolfman actually looking like the Wolfman. So there's styles where it may not completely throw off the experience, but ultimately it could have looked better still. And the way they do certain effects or other things, there's darker scenes that maybe build up the realistic element of feeling like you're trapped in that dark environment, but ultimately that also hides some of the details that they could be showing a lot better. And some of the way they go about with the story could be progressed a little bit quicker with a natural longevity of what all they're tackling, even though they have some nice themes, some nice details that they have to include in order to reference things later on and have a payoff for certain aspects. Ultimately, those things can still build up a lot of time in order to get to that payoff, which may take away some of the experience that the build-up doesn't necessarily have as much energy in order to keep you captivated throughout, in order to get to that point. And also the way it ends, it makes sense. There's some things that it really gravitates to the audience, but the actual ending scene itself sort of left you on a, not necessarily cliffhanger, but like a dead end that it sort of preludes to a sequel, but not necessarily going into a sequel if it completely doesn't need to. But it was like a dead point that sort of left it on a weird note all told. So that's just my personal review for Wolfman, which I have to rate as simply 5.5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you seen Leigh Whannell's Wolfman? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Or is it somewhere right in the middle? Make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in the film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.